Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live right here on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network 105.3 from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 from New Orleans. We're fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee, who have been a part of our journey since the very beginning. And that's quite a while now. Probably close to about 420 episodes in. So thank you, Folgers. We appreciate you so very much. Also, big thank you to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, aka Justin Snicker, for the contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for the intro you just heard. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all of your favorite music streaming platforms. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind the banners and logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. He's also specializes in the horror genre and can do fantastic commission pieces. So please check him out. So tonight we welcome back to our favorite people, who's Daniel and Teresa Duke. They're going to be discussing book 3, which is Secret History of the Wild Wild West. And it's going to be unraveling, some hidden history of the Wild West and secret organizations and connections and, Jesse James and, of course, other famous outlaws. So there's a lot of research that went into this book, and there's a whole lot of stuff to talk about. So, of course, as you know, we do have 8 platforms that we are streaming to simultaneously. The only one that does not have a chat room, of course, is Roku. So I don't think Roku TV would be much into having chat rooms. But anyway, not a thing. So we will, of course, be trying to come in with that 7-lane superhighway down to 1. And we are, of course, keeping up with the guests. I may flash your comments up here and there. But we'll, of course, only address things as we move forward. So thank you all look, already. There we go. Catherine, hello. Hello. Zisan, hello. Mark, hello. How's it going, buddy? And of course, Michelle, Dolly, Laura. Well, hello, Laura. Nice to see you joining us. Cindy, hi. So we are just waiting for Daniel to come in. But hey, Teresa's here, so we can definitely get the party going. And bam, here we go. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I am fabulous. How are you?
I love that fabulous. Well, I'm a little, worn. It's been a couple of weeks and a half, but hey, I made it.
Yes.
Oh, it's almost
Last
Friday.
time, I was thinking last time I was on your show, I could barely speak because I just had 2 root canals done.
Oh,
So I'm so grateful I'm finished with all my dental procedures and just in
right.
time for, this interview, which I'm very grateful for. I felt really silly the last time because I literally was so sore and I was just kind of sitting there and I was like, oh, I probably look really crazy sitting here saying nothing.
Ah, you look beautiful. You just, you want to be an ornament that works as well. So,
Yeah. So
that
I'm
works.
grateful. My teeth are all that's over with. And I was like, just in time. So I'm really excited to be back.
Well,
And
that's
thank you for having us
fantastic.
back. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you guys back. We love you. Of course, Amelia, we have to send Amelia some love and light, guys. They have a little, emergency going on with their dog, and so they're just spending some extra time and giving some extra lovin's, and she's going to try to definitely listen in. So love and light, wish her well, and I know she's not liking missing this because as of this morning, she was good to go, and as of tonight, it couldn't be a thing. So, you know,
That's
wishing her well.
understandable. Pets are important, so I
Yeah,
I
pets
I
are
hope they will be fine.
right. The fur babies, right? Always. So, oh, there's a Mark. Teresa's allowing me out of the pit to watch the show. Well, could be worse. It could be like a cage in the pit and not be allowed at all. So, oh, hey Dan, how are you?
Pretty good, and you?
Can you hear?
Hmm.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
We're good. Excellent. Yeah. So,
Okay, good.
welcome. Nice to looking forward to this one. Just saying. Well, I look forward to
Good to
all of
be
them,
back.
but I know it's like
You
kind of
know,
like the grand finale.
yeah. With me, it's kind of breaking up on my end. We live in a rural area. I I might drive up, drive up to the top of the hill where I get
The
better
hill.
reception on the property. So,
Right. Oh, well, that's
so
okay. If you have
all
to,
right,
just let us know. And Teresa and I will just hold the fort.
okay. Well, if I think it's better safe than sorry, I think I'm going to head up there right now.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm sorry about that. I was hoping it'd be fine. Sometimes it's fine here, but I guess with all the stuff late today, things are kind of
Right.
iffy. So
Okay.
anyway, I'll be right back.
Okay. You can just use the same link.
Okay.
All right. Well, it's you and I. So got more people chiming in, and so while we're waiting, why for those who are just tuning in, why don't we just do a recap as to maybe your background and not that we all don't know who you are, but we have I noticed there's a few new faces in chat, and then we do have a lot of listeners. So we'll get
Oh
started
yeah,
with that.
definitely. Okay,
Okay,
well,
take it
my name's
away.
Teresa Duke. And we have been continuing this journey of Jesse James, my great great grandfather, who went under the assumed alias of James L. Courtney. My mom originally started this research. She heard the stories since she was a little girl. Um, that Jesse James didn't really die and that he faked his death and moved to Texas and that it was her uh, grandmother's father. And
Wow.
she heard it her entire life. Um, it wasn't until probably right when we were graduating college, I was the last one out. I'm the baby of the family, and I was the last one out, and she was kind of going through what do I do now? My kids are out. What do I do? What do I do
You
with
left the nest. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
right,
So
right.
this is kind of when she just decided to really get, you know, more into the story to try to find out once and for all
Mhm.
um, if the rumors were really true that her great grandfather was, you know, the outlaw Jesse James, famous or
Right,
infamous. It depends
right.
on, you
Depends how you
know,
look at it.
yeah, it depends on your perspective. I say
Right,
famous, but I'm okay with
right.
other people saying infamous. To each
Always one
their
of my
own.
favorite outlaws.
Yeah, to each their own. But
Right.
but yeah, she did. She decided she wanted to get serious and try to find out once and for all, and either find out the truth or just put the rumors to rest and say, hey, that's crazy. It's not him. Well, she started digging into it. And the more she started digging into it, the deeper the rabbit hole got. She found incredible amounts of research to back up the proof that there were a multitude of connections proving that he was like directly linked to the James family. And
Wow.
then she went beyond that and had some family photos identified by forensic scientists stating he matched up. His pictures matched up with the famous outlaw, Jesse
Wow.
James. So
Right.
that just kind of steamrolled ahead, and she kept digging and digging. She wrote 3 books, had
Oh,
yeah, incredible amounts of research. She found many pit holes. They did a exhumation in 1995, and they stated that 99% accuracy that he was indeed the outlaw who was buried in Mount Olivet in Missouri. Well, she debunked that and found all this evidence to prove otherwise.
right.
Well, to make a long story short, she passed away in 2015,
Mm,
and Danny and I decided we made a vow to continue her research. So
right.
that's what we did. Um, Danny uh, wrote a book about the treasures, and then it just kind of steamrolled ahead with that. And then he
Right.
asked me to help him with the second book. And then he wrote a third book, which we're going to discuss today. But
Yes.
yeah, it's been with my mom. It was since she was a little kid, up until she died, which she was like 68. And then
Wow.
for the
Wow.
last, like, since I want to say 1995, that's when me and Danny really started getting into it. And it's just been pretty much our whole lives. So
Right.
we
Right. But
just,
what a legacy. What a legacy, right?
it is. And
Right.
it's just there's so many different rabbit holes that come out of it. And it's like I wrote a lot of notes tonight. So because there's so much. It's like
Right.
volumes of evidence that we
Right.
have, and we're just it sometimes it's just so much that it's kind of hard to put it into words. So I got prepared
Right.
tonight. It's like I'm going to write notes. I'm going to have it
That's
organized.
the best way to do it. That's the best way to do it. Eh,
Yeah.
there we go. Yeah, you just had to join the party. How's it going? A little better for you?
It's a lot better.
Oh, wow. Is it ever? All right.
I
Well,
was afraid with all the outages, the internet outages globally today. I was like, I hope we can make it tonight. So thankfully
wow.
we are
I
all here.
know. I would have actually probably played a replay with you guys. Oh, and he's gone. Wait for him to come back. I probably would have played a replay with you guys just to kind of get, everything primed up and then try to squeeze you back in. But,
Oh yeah.
we're booking into May, which makes it really hard. So I'm
Oh
really glad
yes.
you
Oh
guys
yeah.
did make it. And as we say that, Dan just did a complete disappearing act. There he's back. All right. Wow, where'd you go?
I don't know. It's a screen disappeared and
Yeah, we're
I,
talking. All of a sudden, there you were, there you weren't.
yeah, that
So,
was weird. So
indeed.
it's
Yeah.
it's anyway. I wanted to tell you thanks for having us back on. I
Oh,
th-
it's a
th-
pleasure.
it's an
Yeah,
honor for us. So
it's a
Thank
huge
you.
honor. We really
It
appreciate being here.
Thank you. Thank you. I know Amelia's probably just like I said, as of today, she was ready to go. And by tonight, I think her little guy, her little pet just kind of went the other way. So I'm just like, you
Oh
know,
no.
I
Yeah.
know
uh,
it's
I
tough, but
understand that. We lost our cat last Memorial Day, and she was over
oh
20. She was
yeah.
yeah,
everything. So I totally get that, and my thoughts are with her.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm hoping she's able to at least listen in. And we've got Teresa was just catching him up, just recapping your family history and so on. And hey, Alan. So we'll address one quick question before we jump into book 3. Oh, hold on, right now. Get back. There we go. Was DNA testing done to match your DNA?
Yes, we do
yeah, and
have.
that's that.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Teresa.
No, no, you can go. But yeah, we definitely had DNA matchup. We had a forensic scientist uh, verify a connection, a known family member with the Jesse James family to our, and it was a match. I can't remember her name though, Danny. Do you remember?
Sue. Yeah, it was Sue Laura Hale. Um,
Yes. Yes.
she she was in her 90s. Back in 1995 when they did the exhumation, the James Farman Museum up in Missouri, of the alleged grave of Jesse. And they claimed that they proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Jesse James died, as history said. And
Mm,
anyway, our late mother, no pun intended, shot their story full of holes. They
right.
didn't have any strict chain of custody, um, all that. But the thing about the DNA, um, Sue Laura Hale was the only living relative that was undisputed by anybody.
Mm,
Us, the other side, James family, which is us and others, and the people at the James Farman Museum up in Missouri.
mm,
Nobody disputed it, but they didn't even mention it. They acted like um, the only person that they could test the mitochondrial DNA against was a guy in Oklahoma, and
mm,
his lineage is very questionable at best. And I
right.
don't. We wondered. We asked. We never got an answer why they didn't go through Sue Laura Hale, because she was
Hmm.
from a direct line of women from Zerelda, who was Zerelda was Jesse and Frank's mother,
Right.
and Sue Laura Hale was a direct line of descent. She had the same mitochondrial DNA, and they acted like they didn't know anything about it. Publicly, they acted like that. Yet no, and we know they knew because she was in the family tree. So mom called her in California and asked her if she would submit a sample, and she went to her doctor at the hospital at near the hospital. He
Hmm.
he he extracted the blood, just a quick little test. He got the blood and sent it strict chain of custody to. We never touched it. It went straight to the DNA reference lab in San Antonio, and
Right.
Dr. Salih, who works there, does work for the feds, states,
Mm,
cities. He's very good at what he does. Um, anyway, he tested the blood and said there was a definite relationship, but the way the fight had gone with DNA and everything else we had done with the death threats and all that, he said when they're fighting that much, you're going to need to exhume every relative from on the step from mom, um, from her DNA to her dad to his mother to Jesse to Zerelda, and we've
Jeepers.
got yeah, it's so he said you need, because when it's of that kind of importance, history's on the line. You want to make sure you've got all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. So
Right.
we know there's a definite relationship, which that alone gives us more proof for our story than the the traditionally accepted history.
Hmm.
And they can't stand that. But that
Right.
I don't know why it gets to that point. It should be about the truth, not about somebody's pride or ego or what their
I
grandpa
agree.
told them.
This
So
is like American history. This is really
yeah,
important,
eh,
and you got your proof, and it led to this incredible journey for you guys and all of this information that you have found. And we've gone through the first two books. Guys, you're all going to have to go listen to the archive if you haven't, just to catch yourselves up to where we are tonight, which is book 3, The Secrets of the Wild Wild West. Just because nothing else wasn't, incredible enough with secrets. So I just got even
yeah,
more secrets. So I don't know, guys, where do you want to start with this? Because there is a lot of information. I mean, I was doing some reading, and
It's a
you're
lot.
getting into a lot of connections,
yeah.
right?
It
Like,
it gets
It's mind
uh
blowing.
and
yeah.
the entire doing the James family tree, and then the family trees of everybody around him. It shocked me at how they all tie in together. LBJ, President LBJ
Mhm.
would be a distant cousin of Jesse James. Sorry, my arm slipped.
That's a
Also, Billy Saw Estes, he was an infamous character in Texas. We met him personally. That the FBI was after him. According to him, until he died in his late 80s. So,
wow. Wow.
but he was the first man to be acquitted in for a murder trial because of cameras in the courtroom. And I thought, it's
Wow.
so that, but at the same, he was very polite to my mother. And when we met him, and he was a character. That's all I'll say. but
Right. Well, you
but
know he is when you have to say it that way.
yeah,
Right.
but I mean,
Yeah.
it the connections, it ties in with, people in current, like LBJ, more modern times. Uh, Billy Saul Estes, back in Jesse's day, he was related to Governor Timberlake, or not Timberlake, Governor Crittenden, and also Sheriff Timberlake. The police commissioner H. Craig, who spent a large part of his career allegedly chasing the James gang, but he never caught him. He he was related to Jesse, so he was related to the governor of Missouri. He was related to the county sheriff from Clay County, H. Craig, the police commissioner in Kansas City, and a lot of other people. Not only that, um, the thing about H. Craig always, it piqued my curiosity with him. And stop me if I seem like I'm rambling. There's a
No,
lot of
you
information in
guys
all this.
just go. Yeah.
So H. Craig was present at the when they allegedly killed Jesse James. And, like we'd mentioned before, we believe that was Jesse's first cousin, Wood Height, who bore a strong resemblance to Jesse. Very few people knew what Jesse looked like. Even the law, like the Pinkerton detective agents, who were supposed to be the cream of the crop, the best in the country, they didn't even know who they were chasing. They didn't know what he looked like. They didn't have a good description of him. So,
Right.
there's a body that looks similar to Jesse. It fit the bill. A
That'll
couple
do.
of family members and old gang members said, "Yeah, that's him," and they took their word for it. They didn't have any way to disprove that, so they all accepted it. But
Right.
back to H. Craig, the police commissioner Craig, shortly after that, after the alleged assassination, um, he retired and moved down to South Texas next to the King Ranch, actually near Corpus Christi, and he bought a house. I forgot what the price of the house was. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was much more than a policeman should have made, especially back in those days. Bought a
Mm.
great big house. It's a mansion. It's still there. It's a beautiful house. They've kept it
Wow.
up. Uh, and anyway, he went hunting with the rich guys who owned the King Ranch, which I thought was odd, interesting, but that was just one little tidbit. Looking for anything out of the ordinary, and if you dig on a lot of these people, you'll find things that just don't seem to add up.
Hmm.
Um, but that was Craig. He was also there were like Jesse's father was a Baptist minister. He was also his father was a minister. He was part of this. What I'm getting at in the whole book, the point of that is there was a connection, multiple and powerful connections through family, blood ties, or through just association with people, but they all had different things in common, like the Baptist church. A lot of these
Right.
guys were Baptists. A lot of them were also Freemasons.
Hmm.
Another interesting thing on the tree, it's kind of like well, it is a family tree. It shows all their connections, how they were all related, some distantly, but they were also related not only by blood, but also um, I guess their political and religious affiliations. Um,
Mm.
the Knights of the Golden Circle, George Bickley, the guy who started that, he was also related. He's in that tree, distantly related to Jesse. He's very close. He's a lot closer to the governor of Missouri, Governor Crittenden, and that was the Knights of the Golden Circle was the secret society, the Confederate secret society, whose alleged goal was to during the war to thwart any Union troop movements. After the war, their alleged goal was to get as much money as they could, any way they could, to refund a second civil war. So there's a lot of, it's interesting to me. The most interesting part of all of that is how all those powerful families seemed to move back and forth through the ages. They're all
Mm.
tied in. They kept the power. Certain family members seem to hold on to that power, and it just keeps on going. And that just makes it's hard to stop that kind of research. But when you start getting close to people who are in great positions of power and alive today, that's when you get a little nervous. So,
Right. Right.
But
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 uh,
I think also Danny's goal was to prove, and correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, but
yeah,
it was also kind of to prove that they weren't just outlaws, common
yeah,
thieves. They had a higher purpose, and they had a lot of political connections to
Hmm.
kind of help
yeah,
carry this goal out.
Hmm. Which
yep,
is a
yeah,
lot different than what history teaches you. Like these are just bad boys
Mhm.
looking to make some trouble, rob,
yeah.
wreak some
Yep.
havoc in the West, and like
Yeah.
they
Well,
don't really ever explore the bigger picture.
Mhm.
But do you think they knew? I mean,
Oh,
oh,
I
they
think
the
knew,
people
so.
making these
Yeah.
films, I think would know.
they
You're
knew.
looking at those powerful people, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like with the Knights of the Golden Circle, they were so secretive. I have never seen, well, people claim Albert Pike was a part of it. And we all know
Right.
Albert Pike was a 33rd degree Freemason. They
Right.
claim that the inner circle at the top was, people like Albert Pike, Jesse
Mm.
James, and quite a few other people. But there's no proof that they were. Until I see proof, I can't really claim. I'm not comfortable claiming that
Hmm.
until I have evidence to show that, yeah, they were members of the KGC. But I
Right.
do know they were Freemasons. Not all Freemasons, and a lot, like I'm a Freemason.
Hmm.
Um, most Freemasons today don't know much about that at all.
Right.
But there are people like the
Dan
Grand Master of the
Jackson.
Knights Templar. Yeah, yeah, Don Jackson.
Yeah,
I
Don
was going to
Jackson.
mention the Knights of the Gold, not Knights of the Golden Circle, Knights Templar. All these
Yes.
Knights groups, I start getting them mixed up. The
Right.
Knights Templar Grandmaster Timothy Hogan. He's
Yes.
got a TV show with Gaia.
Oh,
Um,
it's an excellent, excellent show.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
and he's a
excellent.
great guy.
Right.
He's a Mason. He knew and knows a lot about this story. In fact, he knew the first book I wrote about the treasures. He wrote a glowing
Mhm.
endorsement for that. But there's a lot of, I'm not saying they were good or bad. None of them were angels. But at the same
Mhm.
time, when you've got political and religious beliefs on different sides, opposing
Yeah,
views, those
and
kind of wars, especially when it leads to power struggles, war. It's
war
always
makes
under the
money. War
yeah.
makes money. Let's face it, for a lot of different organizations, military, governments, even to this day. So, do you think maybe that you have all these powerful political figures, and do you think it's like, okay, Jesse, this is your role. You're going to help
Yeah.
get this. You're going to be the source of us funding another
I think
I
I
do
think
support.
he
think,
was
yeah, like, let me
he
make one point, Danny. Just
all
one
right.
point real fast. So, um, during mom's research, she came in contact with a gentleman whose name was Don Jackson. His
Right,
grandfather lived next to our grandfather. Grandpa Courtney is what we call him. But
right.
um, he said that the knowledge, they all knew he was Jesse James, and the knowledge was passed down through his family. And he also said it was a Masonic secret. So
Yeah.
Wow.
that's just some more evidence that we feel like they did know, and that was all they were,
Right.
that was his protection to continue with what his goal was to do.
And that would be in the archives for sure. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You know, so
Yeah. Yeah, and there's also, like with the Masons, I'm Scottish Rite, normal Mason, Blue Lodge, and then moved on to Scottish Rite. There's groups within groups. It would take multiple lifetimes to go through all of that. Uh,
mhm,
it's interesting. It reminds me of fractals. It just keeps breaking off into other groups within groups within groups. It
mhm.
reminds me of that or Russian dolls. You
Right.
open one and there's another one.
Yeah.
So,
Right, right.
but
Right.
it. I think the God. Now I'm getting confused. There's so many paths you can go on with all of this. It takes it. I wish I could say it all in one setting, but it's just too much.
Mhm,
I know, like Teresa mentioned Don Jackson. I mentioned, and Don's a Mason. Um,
Mhm.
Timothy Hogan, Grandmaster of the Knights Templar.
Yeah.
He's also a Mason.
Yeah,
There's a
I
lot
think
of
I've got one of his books. Like, he's really
he,
amazing.
he's got
He
he's very
is.
and he's got a
Versed.
lot of knowledge.
Oh
Very
yeah.
Yes.
well versed.
Oh, yes.
Um,
Yes.
he travels to Egypt a lot. Actually, he has tours in Egypt that people can go on with him. I haven't been able to do it yet, but
Right.
he goes to Egypt, Lebanon, different places. When he went to Lebanon, he had to have in his words, it was a Templar security force that went with him.
I
And I
bet.
thought that was interesting. That was really
Yes.
cool.
But it's
But
interesting
yeah,
to me how these secrets are now, secrets that were meant to be shared with the world, and the timing was never right. And secrets are now slowly coming out. And big thanks to him, for
Oh yeah.
coming
mhm,
out saying, okay, we're testing the waters just to see how people are going to feel about this. Is it safe to do so? Will it be well received? And I mean, your
exactly.
family now, I mean, it kind of falls right into some of that groundwork too on this side of the world.
Oh
Yeah,
yes.
it definitely does. And,
That's
you
substantial.
know, anytime you come out with stuff like that, you're going to make enemies even within your
Mhm.
own organization. If you're,
Yeah.
a mate, some Masons don't like it. Some don't want to believe it that there could have
Right.
been an outlaw, in their group. Well, I've had people tell me you're trying to tell me an outlaw was a Freemason. And I said, where do you think Freemasons came from? The Templars. Templars were outlaws after they were banned by the Vatican. So
Yep.
we all
Right.
came from outlaws.
Right. Right. Right.
Even
So
burned. They were even, some of them were even burned at the stake.
Oh,
So
absolutely. The last Grand Master, Jacques de
yeah,
Molay,
yeah,
was one of those people. But there's
yeah.
yeah,
there's so much to that. Absolutely. But I mean, it could have just been like, sure, Jesse James was an outlaw, but maybe that was just what his role in all of this was, because they could. They had the
yeah.
know-how. They had the
Well,
The
they
skills. They
protection.
knew, they just knew.
exactly, and they
Yep.
had just gone through the Civil War. Jesse was
Mhm,
part of Quantrill's guerrillas, and
mhm.
some people think they were great guys. Other people call I try to keep out of the politics of all of
Of
that. That was
course.
their time. That's not our
Right.
time. So I just
Right.
look at it as history. And
Right.
but that aside, they were the most feared group of guerrillas during the Civil War. And somebody like that who knew what they were doing, I mean, they were perfectly trained for the outlaw life. It was like
Right.
special forces. So
Right.
having a group, Jesse and the youngers who rode with him, um, having a group like that's you couldn't ask for a better crew, like
Mhm.
a criminal crew. So
Well, no, and it seems like from what you're saying that there was a little bit of protection going on there for him as well.
yeah, there
Mhm.
was. If he hadn't had the connections that he had through his family, through
Mhm.
the Masons and others, he wouldn't have been able to. I don't think he would have pulled it off or could have pulled it off.
Right. Right.
So, and
Yeah.
like when he relocated to Texas, he was he was in Texas before he, faked his death. He was living under the alias of one of his cousins, and his alias
Mm.
was James L. Courtney. Um, and one of his friends, and this was told to our family by another Mason. His granddad grew up or was in that neighborhood, and he was friends with Jesse. He said, when you die, what name do you want to be buried under?" And Jesse's answer was, "A name to live by is a name to live by is a name to die by." And I always liked that quote. But
Right.
I think he also knew if 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 he admitted that he was Jesse James, or if they put it on the tombstone, his kids would have caught all kinds of trouble or hell just
Oh,
just
sure.
for just for
Mhm.
being the children of one of the greatest outlaws in U.S. history. So
Right. Right. And he was also, I mean, not only was he connected to all of these powerful figures, but he's pretty connected to a lot of other outlaws as well.
yeah,
Right.
Johnny
Like,
Ringo, yeah,
right. Right.
Billy the Kid. So that's
He's
like
another
a
one that's got some controversy around his
Bonnie
death.
and
yeah,
Clyde. Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh, wow, really? That's
yeah.
interesting.
Tell her about
I
that
never
one, Teresa.
associate Bonnie and Clyde with the Wild Wild West, but really
Yeah,
it was the
they
same
came
time,
later.
wasn't it?
Well,
They
Right.
came later. But
yeah,
go ahead.
we know when my mom was doing the research, when she first started this, she went to visit her aunt, and um, her aunt gave her a map, a treasure map that belonged to Grandpa Courtney, because she knew mom was wanting to dig, get further into digging into all of this. So she had a map in her possession that belonged to Grandpa Courtney. And attached to this map was a newspaper clipping of Bonnie and Clyde, which we always thought was kind of weird. But
Yeah.
Mhm.
there also, we discovered throughout time and research that I want to say wasn't it Clyde's grandfather, or was it Bonnie's
No, it was
grandmother? Bonnie's
Bonnie Parker's.
grandfather?
No, Bonnie Parker's grandfather.
Yep.
His farm was right next to Jesse's farm in Blevins, Texas. And
Sure.
when we found that out, we thought, my God, that's odd. I mean, why,
Right.
that was just really odd. And then,
Right.
you keep digging, and then you find out, like Teresa was mentioning, um, t- Jesse's wife was Mary Ellen Barron, and one of her ancestors, or her aunt, wasn't it her aunt Teresa? Mahala Barron. Mahala Barron
It was Clyde
was a
Barrow's Danny, it was Clyde Barrow's grandmother
yeah,
was Mahala
yes.
Barron.
I'm trying to picture it in my mind, and it ends up, it's hard to describe a family tree sometimes. But Jesse's wife was Mary Ellen Barron, and she was related to Mahala Barron, who was Clyde Barrow's what, grandmother?
Grandmother.
Yeah. So there's a family. I mean, there's a connection there through
And what
Jesse's
are
Yeah.
the
wife,
odds that they
and
were like right next
yeah,
to another outlaw? It's
Right.
just so
It's a
much.
and
small world, man.
Yeah.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
and you keep the more you dig and the more you research, it's addictive. But that old saying, the old adage that history's stranger than fiction, or the
Mhm.
truth is stranger than fiction, it's true.
Right. Right.
There's a lot
Right.
of odd. God,
Right.
I'm starting to. There was
Well,
something else I
I
was going to
wanted
add to that, and I keep forgetting.
Can I
Go ahead.
while you're trying to remember, I also wanted to point out it's interesting, because Grandpa Courtney, his father-in-law was a captain of the Texas Rangers. So it's like all the
Wow.
connections, the law, the outlaws, the Masons.
Right.
It's all kind of interwoven, and it kind of, you know, makes so much sense when it hits that, wow, it's all connected. And that
Yeah.
kind of, that's kind of how they got by with so much.
I
Well, it's kind of like, I think I'd mentioned it to you last time, in Jesse's diary that we have. He went. He details a trip they went on. It was a robbing excursion. They had several targets they were after, and it was planned ahead of time. That leads down another trail. But anyway, this trip they went on, he stayed the night at Gervais Fontenot's house. And I thought, who's this Gervais Fontenot? So I looked him up. He was the retired U.S. Marshal. And I thought, why the hell is an outlaw staying at a U.S. Marshal? I mean, that sounds kind of funny.
I would have been
Then,
like, set up.
yeah, well,
My
Yeah.
so
brain.
I started researching Gervais Fontenot more. Found a family tree that his descendants have, and Gervais Fontenot was the nephew of Jean Lafitte, the famous
Oh,
privateer or
see,
pirate.
like, what the heck,
Yeah,
right?
and
What
and
the heck?
then I, digging further into Jean Lafitte. Um, he he helped the U.S. defeat the British in New
That's right.
Orleans, and
Yeah.
before that had happened, the British had tried to recruit Jean Lafitte to help them, and he backstabbed them. And anyway, part of that history, and it's a legitimate part of history. Andrew Jackson, before he was president of the U.S., had Masonic communications with Jean Lafitte, and you can't have Masonic communications unless both parties are Freemasons.
That's right.
So that's
That's
all the
right.
proof I needed that Jean Lafitte was a Mason, which
Right.
ties in with all the other a lot of the other outlaws were Masons. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Yeah. So now you've
most of the
got
key
that.
figures.
You've got that connection right there, and it's the unspoken word. Like you just know.
Yeah,
Okay. Quick question. Were all of these outlaws trying to fund the Confederate to start up again, in your opinion?
I don't. My opinion is they were used by the Freemasons. The Knights of the Golden Circle were probably used by that. I think, the Knights of the Golden Circle, they had some powerful people. Some
Hmm.
were very powerful, but it's like, they lost the war. It didn't sit right with a lot of them. Just like a
Hmm.
football team today, they want a rematch. But
Right.
and I think, so I a lot of those guys were also Freemasons. So in this, I have no proof, but it's just my gut feeling that the Masons used the KGC and then
Right.
got the wealth that they had.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think with them, it's more political than it is,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
than it is
And
anything.
Yep.
and the KGC was trying to recreate a slave empire with Cuba, with Havana, Cuba as the center of a giant circle, their golden circle, which was
Gee.
going to include all of Mexico, Central America, the northern part of South America, the entire South, and most of Texas. That
We'll
was
just throw Texas in there too.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, and they
Wow.
wanted that
Yeah.
to be their new slave empire. That if they would have done it, they would have been the most agriculturally rich or wealthy nation in the world.
Mhm.
But
Right.
fortunately, they didn't do it because they also included, part of that plan involved a lot of slaves. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they just didn't want to let go of that.
No. Well, it's
For,
hard. The South didn't. I mean, that's what the Civil War was
yeah,
about,
yeah,
the way of life, and that was it. And it's because it's your way of life doesn't make it right.
that's
So
right. That's
yeah,
exactly right.
right. Oh my
But
gosh. So what
fortunately,
was
they didn't win, but I think the Masons, that it was almost like the KGC had this weird romanticized dream that they thought of as the perfect world, and
right?
that was in the past. And I think they were foolish to think that they could have continued on with that. But
Hmm.
and I think the Masons knew that, and they just used them while they could, and then they dissipated.
Right, right. So what was this connection to Billy the Kid? Because I find it interesting how
18,
they both, how Billy the Kid went on to fake his death too.
yeah, in I think it was July of 1879, and this is
Yep, it
historical
was.
fact. Um, Billy the Kid and Jesse met up. Um, they met in Las Vegas, New Mexico. Jesse wanted Billy, or from the way it went, it sounds Jesse wanted Billy to join his gang, and they
Mhm.
were going to combine forces and just keep on robbing banks and trains, etc. But that's or the established or the historically accepted version of that.
Right.
I'm really not sure what the truth was behind it, other than I know they met. Jesse was supposedly wanting to team up with Billy,
Mm.
and Billy didn't do it. It didn't happen, so they went their own ways. the The funny thing about that, it was July 1879. Shortly, I think it was after that. I need to look at the date again. 1879 was when Jesse tried to fake his death the first time. It failed.
Oh,
Uh,
it's more than one time. That's interesting.
yeah,
I
and
do.
and
Yeah,
most
there's
people don't realize
actually.
that.
Yeah, it was George Shepard who tried
George
to pull
Shepard,
that
his
one
fellow
off.
gang member, claimed that he shot Jesse in the back of the head, and then he rode into town in Indian territory. Now it's Oklahoma. Rode into town. He tried to claim the reward, but the posse and the sheriff needed a body, and they
Right.
couldn't find a body. There was no body, so it didn't work. And then a few weeks later, Jesse was spotted somewhere, and the story fell apart. Well,
Right.
I think it was July 1879 when he met Billy. 1879 is when his first faked death failed. Then in 81, Billy was assassinated. I think it was a year late. No, 2 years later. July of
Mm.
1881, Billy was assassinated, shot by his fellow former gang member, now Sheriff Pat Garrett. And Pat
Right.
Garrett, by the way, was a Freemason as well. Um, then
And I have to
in eight,
assume Billy the Kid wasn't, because you wouldn't shoot another Mason.
no, I don't believe Billy was a Mason. I've
Right,
never even heard
right,
that he was a Mason.
right.
But Pat Garrett was. Pat Garrett was murdered years later out in the desert. And that's a big mystery. Nobody knows for sure who killed him. But
Mm,
anyway, so they met in 1879. Jesse tried his first faked death in 1879. Billy was killed in July of 1881, and then Jesse was allegedly killed in 9 months later in April of 1882. So
So
I
wow.
thought it was kind of odd that they met,
Like,
and shortly after that, they both have,
yeah,
shot
they
like
by a
had
that.
fellow gang member.
so
Yeah.
according to two different sources, they both had a mutual friend.
Mm,
Um, and it is backed
Yep.
up. There was a gentleman by the name of Henry F. Hoyt who wrote a book. It was
Yep.
titled A Frontier Doctor, and he describes how he met Billy and Jesse for dinner in July 1879, through the Moors. They had a hotel, and the Moors was the common link between Jesse and Billy. And then
wow.
this
Yeah.
was also backed up with the second book. Um, the author was Bill Marksley, and it was titled Billy the Kid and Jesse James, Outlaws of the Legendary West. And he backed up the exact same statement that the Hoyt man mentioned, how they
Mhm.
met and how they had common friends. So
Yep.
they had mutual friends.
Right. Hmm. See, I don't believe much in coincidences. I'm
Me
not a
either.
coincidence type of guy who growls, I don't. I just don't. I believe in synchronicities, and I believe that, that somehow things come together as they're meant to. Um,
And
yeah.
it's also funny, just to kind of back up, I wanted to get in there when Danny was mentioning how in 1879, um, they tried to say that Jesse was, assassinated.
Right.
The Los Angeles newspaper came out. They doubted it, and they came out with a quote the
Yeah.
day after that so-called shooting and said, "Jesse James is like a cat. He has been killed a great many times, only to as often enjoy a resurrection." So,
Ah.
yeah. So,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't, you know, there were other times. So he tried to do it and it wasn't successful. But,
Well,
Yeah.
Janie here is related to Billy the Kid. Look at that. Just like a big old reunion.
oh, wow.
That's
Kind
cool.
of, sort of. Right.
Hello,
Sort of,
Janie.
kind of. This is good.
Hello.
That's really cool.
So, yeah. So, well, that is really interesting because, you know, like I don't see Masons technically killing Masons. I see Masons protecting Masons. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Um.
Jesse would have been, they would have like, okay, you're done. We're done. We're just going to make you sort of go away. But
Yep.
with Billy the Kid, like the fact that they both met with this doctor, they both had dinner, and then they both within a year, within inside of a year, they both just sort of fall
Yeah.
off of this fall out of sight, shall we say?
Well, and also both of them are rumored by different. Jesse faked his death. We've proven
Yeah,
that with. We've got more proof than established history has, that
right,
our story's right and the accepted history is wrong. And
right,
then on Billy's side, we've got our hands full with Jesse, but there's a lot of people claiming Billy faked his death. I'm
right.
I'm not really I'm I'm not sure, but it wouldn't shock me at all. People, these days it would be extremely hard to fake your death. Back then,
Right.
it was a lot easier.
Or you could
I
just
mean, they
disappear,
yeah, I mean,
right?
you could a lot of Jesse and Billy were both extremely infamous or
Mhm.
famous, depending on where they were.
Right,
But um,
right.
it even with their notoriety, they could have gone to another country or moved somewhere else, changed their appearance, and probably gotten by with it for a while at least. But
You could go south
uh,
and never be seen again and never be
yeah, or
caught.
they could have gone to Europe, and I
Yeah.
don't think anything would have ever happened. But
Yeah, right.
it was interesting. The other thing, I think he came to Texas. One of the main reasons we think he came to Texas was because of the Freemasons and his ties. And there were a lot of former Quantrill's guerrillas who were also Masons who lived around Blevins, Texas, and
Mhm.
it was kind of like he had a circle of protection around him. They all protected each other. So
Belle
if
Right.
anybody,
Star
eh,
even
yeah,
lived in
Bell Star.
Texas.
Right.
Bell Star lived about, I think it's about 25 miles northwest of where Jesse lived, and
Mm,
she lived near, oh God, Clifton, Texas.
And we
right.
also have her, don't we, Danny, in the picture with Grandpa Courtney and Frank and
Yeah, at Frank James's wedding when he married Ann Ralston. Um, there's, let's see, there's Frank, Jesse, Ann Ralston in the front of the photo, and then the back of the photo there's people descent people from Blevins whose descendants have identified them. Like one guy who was a Don Jackson, who was a game warden for years, and now he's a
Mhm.
deputy sheriff out in Pecos, Texas. Um,
Mhm.
he identified his grandfather in the photo. Bell stars in the photo. Jesse and Frank's mom, Zerelda. A lot of known James family members are in that photo. And
Mhm.
the setting of the photo is in Blevins, Texas, at the house that Jesse lived in. So, and with known people from Blevins. The thing about,
Right.
and another thing, some of our detractors tried to claim that, well, maybe Mr. Jackson's great grandfather traveled to Missouri. That it's not the. He said, according to their family, um, the Mister Grandpa Jackson he fought for the Confederacy. He was in Georgia, and after the Civil War, he walked all the way to Texas on
Mhm.
foot. And he settled in Blevins, and he swore and he kept up to his promise that he would never travel anywhere again after that walk. So,
Mhm.
so anyway, there's a lot of there's so much evidence showing that Frank's wedding, which is another historical, just a piece of history. We've
Mhm.
got the photo. He was married in Blevins, Texas, to Annie Ralston.
There it is.
But
There you have it.
yeah,
So,
it's
so
interesting.
I mean, your grandfather or great grandfather kept some pretty detailed records and diaries through his life, didn't he? I mean, you guys got and your mom got a lot of information that he pretty much had in these diaries.
yes. We
Yeah,
even have in one of the diaries in our possession, um, it looks like he put in there like it's almost like he couldn't resist it because he had to live that lie, but he had to put in his journal. It was a J. James, and it was like, well,
yeah.
why was that in there?
Right.
He signed
Right.
his name. He signed his name, J. James. He also wrote his initials, JWJ. And, Jesse James's full name was Jesse Woodson James.
Right.
He signed JWJ in several places. There
Mhm.
was a lot of known James gang members mentioned in his diary. Uh,
Right.
and then he would add odd things like you're reading the diary. A lot of it can be, it's just everyday life back in the 1800s. It's like,
Right.
he'll talk about he cut some hay, and then they were breaking horses, and he never wrote with any emotion at all. One entry was Dave broke his neck, and that was
Jeez.
it.
Wow.
Not it's a shame, I'm
Right.
sad, anything like that. It was
Right.
just Dave broke his neck. And then the next day went to town and bought calico and groceries or whatever.
Right.
It was just really
Crazy.
strange. And they bought
What
a lot of
was?
calico.
Right.
But anyway,
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
yeah.
So what was the connection to Johnny Ringo?
Johnny Ringo was great nephew of Jesse's mother,
Gee.
through marriage. Jesse's father, Jesse and Frank's father, Robert Saley James, was a Baptist preacher. The rumor is that he left the family to go preach the gospel in California in the gold fields. A lot of people, even our detractors have claimed that she was a hard woman to live with, very
Right.
strong minded. And I thought, well, it sounds like all the women in our family. Well, I'm used to that, but she.
Ouch, Teresa. That's a big
I'm
ouch.
joking, Teresa. Anyway, um, so he ran off, left the family, and he died in California.
Right.
And then she married a wealthy farmer named Ben Sims,
Right.
and that marriage was very short lived. Ben was riding a horse, as the story goes. He treated uh, Jesse and Frank bad.
Mhm.
That's the rumors from then. But he was riding his horse and fell off and broke his neck, and that was the end of Ben. But through Ben, they were cousins by marriage to Johnny Ringo,
Wow.
which I thought, Johnny Ringo he's the guy in one of the guys in the OK Corral gunfight. So
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
it was a small world back then.
Small world, but I
Yeah,
mean, it just
and
seemed to be like the main profession. It's like,
yeah,
When
well,
well,
you
they
sit
all grew
there
up.
and connect all the dots, it's overwhelming. It's just
mhm,
overwhelming, all the different dots that you can connect with the
mhm,
story. And just,
Yeah,
when our mom first started this, it was just she didn't none of us realized why all it was just, oh, he didn't die, as history stated. That's all we thought we were going
mhm.
to be coming out with, and it ended up being so much more.
Right.
and
Right.
It's
the another
overwhelming
interesting
sometimes.
Yeah.
one of the things that caught my eye on a lot of this were how many like like high standing Baptist preachers there were and founders of Baptist colleges. Reb Baylor, for example, he was tied in with the family. I've got it listed in the family tree. All the connections on the in my last book. But Reb Baylor was co-founder of Baylor University. They're a Baptist university up in Waco.
Mhm.
Um, and that ties in with. There's a lot that ties in with, but um, there is a large treasure allegedly buried in Waco. And the story of this treasure, it was a 12-ton safe, a safe that weighed 12 tons. It was
Like
on a train
12
car,
trucks.
and it was
Right.
delivered by train car. This safe was, they had a spur off the main railroad that went right next to a cemetery. It was at the time it was just a black cemetery.
Mhm.
Um, and it went by the cemetery, and at the end of the spur they unloaded the safe, and that's, they dug a pit, lined it with timbers to keep it from sinking deeper, as the story goes, and that's where they buried the safe. Well, that it's sandy soil there. The water table is very shallow. It's right, not too deep under the ground, depending on whether and we're in a drought or not. But
Mhm.
long story short, that safe was, people were searching for it for years. And there's a lot of symbols in the cemetery that I saw, Masonic symbols. If I if somebody believed the guy, it looked like these symbols were pointing right to where this safe was supposed to be. They tried to dig it up in 1992. They spent $300,000, rented a crane and the crew to operate this giant crane from Australia. They brought the crane here, got it in Waco, set it up. Texas Rangers were there guarding the site. They and it's in the Waco newspaper archives. They got something. They were hooked up to something. They believe it was a safe, and they said a large, what appeared to be metal object came up from the mud, and then the cable broke and it crashed through the support posts, support beams beneath it, and
Mhm.
supposedly went to bedrock, which is at least 60 or 70 foot below the surface. So
Wow.
that was a lost cause. They tried and tried. They couldn't do it. Everybody ran out of money and everybody went home. Well, back in I think it was 2006 or 7, my mom and I were up there and we saw some guys digging in the same spot, and they wouldn't let us near it. It was they didn't want us near the site, and they had guards and stuff. But my mom contacted the newspaper to see if they knew about it. Nobody said anything. Newspaper just didn't say a word. Well, one of the workers there we went by the next weekend. One of the workers, they were gone. They filled in the hole and everybody was gone. Never heard a word of what happened. One of the workers was a poor guy, and he was cutting up pieces of the cofferdam to sell as scrap metal. And we asked him if he knew anything about the treasure, and he spilled the beans and told us Baylor University hired them to dig for it. And I thought, well, Baylor's the big college. They're pretty much the main economic driver, or were, for the city of Waco, which explains why the newspaper would have been quiet and everybody just kept quiet. But he claimed Baylor found it. And shortly after that, Baylor built a brand new football stadium. I don't know if that ties in with it or not, but it was just an interesting side note. But
Wow.
so what I'm getting at is Baylor has been, and I've heard from other people, Baylor University, not everybody there, but it's probably the board of directors. They know about this. They hunt for treasure. I know the government hunts for treasure. You can find,
Sure.
and they watch treasure hunters. You can find a lot of articles if you dig enough on
Yes.
the FBI swooping in and taking things from people, or keeping people away from certain areas, stuff like that. So it's my guess that it's still going on. It's just descendants from that same group.
So
or
what
groups.
was the estimated value of this said 12-ton safe?
It was supposed to be full of, it was allegedly full of, it had silver and gold and the traditional treasures in it, but it also is said or rumored to have had 13 maps detailing 13 treasures in Canada and the US. Now, I don't know, and nobody knows unless they found, except for those who found it, if it's true or not. So, but I've got photos of the dig. They hired soil liquefaction trucks out of Ohio. It was called Badger. I believe the company name was Badger. I've got photos of the dig, from as close as we could get. Photos of the hole. It was a huge undertaking. They had cofferdams big enough to drive a pickup through, and that's what they were setting down in there to try to keep it from flooding and keep the water out.
Right. It's not easy to lift 12 tons.
Yeah, and especially when it's in muddy water, muddy sand. It kind of trying to pull it up. The wet, the mud acts as, it's kind of like a suction pulling back down on the object, so it's hard to get it out. Kind of like, I'm just imagine your foot in a if you're hip deep in some quicksand, it's hard to get out.
Right. Quick question, and then we can go back to this. Kathy says, was there any connection to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid?
That's interesting. She asks. Yeah. Well, not with Jet. I don't believe Jesse and them were connected to Butch and Sundance, other than they were outlaws. I'm not sure, and that warrants more research. I love research, so but it's interesting just because Teresa and I know a medium. Her name is Heather Besser. Very good medium. We met her, and she's got a lot of ties. I'll let her say it. She could say it a lot better than I could. But anyway, she speaks to members of the Wild Bunch. Right. And when I first met her, I was skeptical. I'm always skeptical of things that I can't see.
The dead speak. A lot of
people use
mediums. The dead speak.
I know. Yeah, I believe. Well, she made a believer out of me. She said things that nobody else could have known. Pets' names, pets we had long ago, family members, stuff like that. And an aunt, one of my aunts who I never liked at all. I don't talk about her. I never talk. And she passed on years ago, but she brought her up, and I thought there's no way anybody could have known anything about that aunt. And Heather, anyway, she made a believer out of me. So she talks to Butch and Etta, and just it's interesting.
Right. So all you have to do is just put it on your list of questions, and say, okay, any connections, and come back and tell us.
All right, I'll do it.
Clearly, inquiring minds want to know. You can bring her on. It might be a lot of fun.
You should have her. Yeah, I think you'd
Yeah,
have a
bring
lot
the
of fun.
baby on. We could do this whole this whole thing. It
That
could
would be
be a lot of
awesome.
fun.
That,
It could be a lot of fun. Um, I know. Hey, we know how to have a good time on the show. So,
yeah,
you
that would be
know,
a lot of fun.
I think so too. And it would be a good opportunity to address, because you've mentioned her before. It'd be really interesting to address some of the things and the comments that she's gotten from them. Because I mean, I've gotten all kinds of stuff, even through my own lineage, through, mediums or regressions and things like that. So past lives and lineage. And sometimes those are the avenues that speak the loudest. If anything,
Yeah,
those are the avenues that put you on the right path to your research,
that's true.
right? And you get all of these validations, which is,
Yep.
you know, it's a start,
Yeah, we've
right?
had some very interesting conversations. Me and Teresa and Heather and some other people. It's
Hmm.
we'll have a little group conversation, kind of like what we're doing right now, and
Right,
we've had a lot of interesting conversations. I
right,
know what you
right.
mean. You you. I was skeptical. I've
Wild,
always been skeptical of things I can't touch or see. Any kind of
right.
facts, something concrete and something you can read or touch. Um,
Mhm.
but when she said some of the things she said, it made a believer out of me.
Right. But if you can get it validated besides that, like it
Hmm.
was my deceased grandfather who put me on the trail to a whole melee of stuff. He used to leave things on my PVR, and I'd come home and say,
Wow.
"Okay, who put this crazy stuff on the PVR?" But like we're all adults, right? And like, no,
Yeah.
kids, like, we never. Why do we want to watch that stuff for? I'm just like, okay, whatever. So the next time a session was done, he says, "Did you put that there?" And he goes, and his smart aleck remark, which is totally him, was, "Well, now she gets it. Thank you." So, but it just snowballs, and it put me down the
Yeah.
right path, and I found through the research and everything else. So sometimes it's that little nudge, otherworldly nudge, that puts you down all these different trails, and that you may not think of going down those paths,
Yeah.
but he knows which direction to put you in, and look at how far you guys have come.
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
Heather told me my spirit guide is Frank James.
Yeah,
So I,
not
I thought
surprised. Yeah, right. So
that's
I mean,
couldn't have.
yeah, it's very cool. So I mean, we hear so much about Jesse James. What about Frank? Like, what
We
what do you think of you?
That's
I wish we knew more.
Oh,
That's
question mark.
Frank.
he.
That always bothered our late mother too.
Yep.
Oh, you
Just
don't
because
know.
Frank. Yeah, he's Jesse. For some reason, Jesse was the famous one out of the whole group. They all were amazing at what they did, and
Hmm.
Frank. Frank was acquitted for all his crimes, and I think there was a lot of people getting strings pulled behind the scenes to make that happen. But he
Yeah.
was acquitted, and the interesting thing is after he was acquitted, while he was hell for years, even before that, he had a lot of really good friends who fought for the North. And for some reason that shocks a lot of people. Some people like to think of Jesse and Frank as diehard Confederates and they hated all Yankees, and blah blah. But actually, they had a lot of friends who were from the North too,
Hmm.
judges, lawyers, people who pulled strings. But at the same time, they fought against each other during the Civil War and became friends later, which I
Right,
always thought was really admirable.
right,
What we
right.
do know
So
about Frank, there's not a whole lot, but what we do know, he was really serious, and Jesse was more the charismatic person, and I
yeah,
think that's why he went over, and he was really bold and daring. But Frank was
yeah,
really, really serious minded, and also he was really into Shakespeare. He was always quoting Shakespeare quotes.
Wow,
yeah,
So,
interesting. Right.
yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's not a lot on Frank, and I wish we could find more.
Well,
That's
They
you'd have
something
said
that
this
that.
we'll have
whole
to.
other branch of the family that you guys could be in touch with if you actually knew where he ended up and what the family tree was from there.
Yep.
Yeah, they said that Frank used to get irritated with Jesse when they were, riding from between towns or wherever, Frank would, they said Jesse would start humming and singing songs, and it would irritate Frank after a while, and they would get in arguments and stuff. I thought that's typical brothers. It
Wow.
sounds like
Yeah.
me and my brother. So
Right. Right. Right.
From what I've done research on, I don't think he ever had any children. Now that's something I'm
yeah, he
gonna have to
did.
verify. Oh,
He
did he? Okay.
he had a son.
Oh, he did? Okay.
So it
Yep.
kept the line going, basically,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
which is nice.
definitely an avenue we could pursue. It would be nice to
Right.
Yeah.
find out more.
Alan says, I thought Frank and Jesse were from out west. Didn't know they were in the Civil War. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
Border
Frank was
wars.
older. Yeah, Frank was older than Jesse by a couple of years, but Jesse was around the age of 14. He tried to join the Confederacy, and the reason that happened, um, there was the border wars between Kansas and Missouri had been going on about almost 10 years before the official start of the Civil War. And
wow.
you'd have people, redlegs from Kansas raiding into Missouri. People in Missouri would raid them just back and forth. And then so the Civil War broke out. They'd had raiders all around them, and Jesse tried to join the Confederacy. He was too young. They turned him away. He was at home farming, and a group of Union-backed guerrillas rode onto the farm, strapped him to a plow, and beat him severely. Just really they beat the
Wow.
hell out of him, whipped him with the backs of their swords, all kinds of stuff. Then they rode on to the farmhouse, and they strapped his mother to a tree. And accounts differ, but they strapped her to a tree and horsewhipped her, and they hung his stepfather, Dr. Reuben Samuel.
And made him, and he was brain damaged ever since, his stepfather.
Yeah, they
And
didn't
he was
kill
a
him.
doctor. He was a
Yeah,
doctor, and after that, it made him where he couldn't do. He wasn't a doctor because
Right. They just took
resulted
away
in brain
faculties.
damage. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Lack of oxygen, probably,
yep,
right?
yeah.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
and that was what that was the main driver that got Jesse into the war. Sorry about that. I heard a strange sound.
No,
Sounded
wait,
like
I'm
it
going to the
jetted.
car with it.
Yeah. Anyway, that was the main driver that got Jesse into the war. He wanted to join. He found Quantrell's guerrillas, and they
There you
took him.
go.
And
Right.
so he was 14, 15 when he started fighting, and quickly proved himself as he was one of the most feared guerrillas out of a group of feared guerrillas. So,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
think at that young age, most teenage boys, just thinking back to me and most of the guys I grew up with at that age, you're not dumb, but you don't have enough sense to fear anything. You think you're
Mhm.
invincible. And I
Right.
think that could have also helped. That could have been one reason he was fearless.
Mm.
He was known for riding. He would break through Union cavalry lines in one case and shot their captain in the face at point blank range, stuff like that.
At that
And
age.
yeah, at that age. So that had to mark a person. I'm sure that marks you.
Well, this
Affects
is what Alan
your
is saying. Like Jesse was basically like a 14-year-old outlaw. He goes, it breaks my heart because he was a child. And it set
yeah,
the stage for who, the path that he would go
yeah,
on to be on.
And
exactly.
he did try to rectify it. He tried to turn himself in, but he got shot
Yeah.
in the lung. So
Wow.
it was kind of
Yeah.
like they were forced to continue on with that way of life.
Right, right. Here's another comment for you guys. We were told we're related to the James gang. Family wouldn't talk about it. We were kept away from dad's side of the family till they showed memory loss. Said we didn't need to know.
Wow.
That is sad. That is so sad when that happens.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like my mother's brother Wayne, my uncle Wayne, he's passed on now, but when he was young, he went to prison. Nobody would ever talk about it. And he
Right.
went to prison for a year and a half. And one day I asked him, I was in my 20s. I said, "Why did you go to prison?" And all he would say was a whole bunch of small things added up to one big thing. and that was his only answer. But back
Mhm.
up until, well, even in some cases now, but it's more acceptable now, I guess. Most people just didn't talk about that. That was like
Mhm.
something you never. It was a dark family secret if somebody was an
Right.
outlaw or went to jail for anything, and
Right.
it's a shame because people don't want to talk about it. We've had 90-year-old relatives, in their old relatives in 80s and 90s who just wouldn't talk about it.
Hmm.
And in fact, we had one relative, May Courtney. Uh, she burned over 200 of Jesse's
Oh, that's
letters that he
so
kept.
sad. That's history
Yeah, that
gone.
made me furious. When she told us that, I bit my
Wow.
tongue. I wasn't going to yell at her or anything, but it
No.
just, that made
Wow.
me furious.
But the
Why would
interesting thing is they wanted to condemn him for not, for being a bad person, but they
Mhm.
sure
Yeah,
didn't mind living on his property and living off of his money. He
yeah,
made
yeah,
sure he took care of all of his kids and grandkids.
Mhm.
And
yeah,
they lived on his farm, lived off his money, but yet they're so quick to condemn. So
That
yeah,
is so
who
sad
who
because
who
that's
is the real
yeah,
history.
bad person there?
Right. No, right, right. It's true. It's true because you have all of these written accounts, his memoirs, his thoughts to whoever he wrote these to. This is how he was
yeah,
feeling at the time. This is what he was going through at the time. Like this is really important part of history, and it's really, really sad. Pat says if you
Yep.
look it up, you'll see where they rode and where their hideouts were, and there have been treasure found that was linked to the James brothers.
yeah. There's a lot of it that's mentioned. When it comes to all the places he buried treasures, some of those are I'm very skeptical over. That's the nicest way I'll put it. They buried a lot more than they. He buried more gold than he ever stole, and
Right,
which also hints at a larger organization, and that's tied back to the Freemasons.
right.
That I mentioned that in my first book. The template, the veil template, the Tree of Life template, that
Yes,
all stems
yes,
all the way back to the Templar alchemists, all that. But
yes, yes.
today, I think and he's right. There's a record of all the robberies Jesse and the gang made. Most
Mhm,
of the robberies, not all. But there's where they buried it. Um,
mhm.
that's a whole different. I'm real skeptical on a lot of those lists
You're
because
probably
people.
never going to see where that was for sure, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I don't think.
unfortunately.
Yeah, and if yeah, exactly.
They're
I'm
never
not.
gonna
I'm
tell
not.
you that. No,
Yeah, yeah.
let's face it.
So
But
I've known where some. We've been shown by Wagner Carr, former attorney general for the state of Texas.
mhm,
He had his driver pick me and mom up, and he showed us where three large caches were buried. One was so large it was only 12 miles from where we grew up, near Georgetown, Texas.
right,
That one was and Jesse had ties to it, but not only Jesse. Not Machine Gun Kelly. It was one of the Pretty Boy Floyd. Pretty Boy Floyd used to come to Texas. A lot of outlaws, even mob guys, would come to
right.
Texas. They'd go to San Antonio. San Antonio has always been a popular spot for outlaws, gangsters, and a lot of different people. Um,
Mhm,
Pretty Boy Floyd, according to Wagner Carr, the Attorney General of Texas, uh, would made deposits. He didn't withdraw anything from that catch in Georgetown. He would
mhm.
add to it, and I thought that
That's
shows an
interesting.
even larger circle.
Mhm.
That ties in with the mafia.
Right. Yeah.
So
The fact that they're not
it's
taking it out and they're adding to it is really, really
yeah,
interesting.
and where that catch when it was recovered, it was in the 80s, the 1980s. And Wagner Carr said it was guarded by Texas Rangers. I
Mhm,
asked him where it ended up, and he wouldn't ever tell me. I didn't expect him to, but I thought once the Texas Rangers recovered it, they oversaw the recovery and took
mhm.
care of it. I don't know
Right,
where it went from there.
right,
It might
right.
not be healthy to know where it went. So
No, no, no. I say the track record for that as maybe not
yeah,
such such a good idea. But it shows you there's this big picture because you mentioned this whole hidden agenda of the elites, and I'm just taking it right here. I'm going to actually show you a book cover. So right there, hidden agenda of the elites. So I'm not making it up. So right, it's right there in print. So so what do you think the hidden agenda, aside from funding another war? I mean, you're looking at a lot of big fish in here.
Yeah,
That goes a lot deeper than just funding a civil war.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and like I'd said about the Knights of the Golden Circle, I think they were used by Freemasons
Right.
or the Freemasonry, or it could be another group. It could be it's. I doubt it's Freemasonry as a whole, but I think it was key figures in the Freemasons or another group within that group.
Right.
But anyway, either way, I think Freemasons used the Knights of the Golden Circle. Fortunately, in my opinion, I personally believe the agenda tied back with the original fight, the Catholic Church versus the Templar versus the Freemasons, who had ties with them, alchemists, different groups who've been
Yes.
persecuted by the Catholic Church. That war, by the way, and I've been told this by a couple of old Masons who I trusted with, I would have trusted my life with them.
Right.
These they that war went up into the 80s between Catholics and Masons.
Wow.
One Mason told me, and I've talked to people, and I've got friends who are Knights of Columbus. It's kind of like the Catholic version of the Freemasons.
Right.
I've got a couple of friends who are Knights of Columbus, and we've talked about that. And nobody, of course, knows all the facts behind it. A 33rd degree Mason was going to tell me why the Masons won that battle, or that up until that point. Anyway, to make a long story short, I believe it may be ongoing. That's where it gets real murky, and I don't know if it's going on now or if they've made peace. But I do know not too long, about a month ago, the current Pope, it was a cardinal with the blessing of the Pope, gave another condemnation of Masonry. So I thought, oh, here it goes again.
Yada yada.
So,
yeah, that's a
yeah, I
tough
don't
one.
think it'll ever end. I think
No.
I don't think it's purely religious. I think it's just power, and power
Power is
corrupts. And I
political.
think it
doesn't help.
it ties in with religious beliefs, political beliefs, and just power.
Right.
Yes.
Guardian says it makes me wonder about all the government ruled land that we cannot have access to.
That's a good. You're on the right track. A lot of that.
All over the world. I grew up in East Texas, Jacksonville, Texas. A lot of history. Yeah, Texas has got a lot of history. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're kind of like Australia. I think Texas, how all the outlaws moved to Australia. It seems like a lot of the same similarity with Texas. All the outlaws came to Texas.
Right.
Yeah.
It's true. Why do you think that is? I mean, seriously,
so
all the good Western stories come out of Texas.
I know.
Yeah, I think it was big. A lot of the Texas Rangers were outlaws themselves. A lot of them. I mean, there's a lot of there's historical. You can read about the Texas Rangers. Some of them were rustling cattle one week, and the next week they were working for the Rangers.
Well, Danny, this brings up a good point. This was in your book. So Grandpa Courtney in his diary mentions George Bible Pickett. He was head of a Confederate camp in Decatur, Texas. His son was Tom Pickett, who rode with Billy the Kid. Also, Tom Pickett, the same one who rode with Billy the Kid, was also a Texas Ranger at one time. So it was kind of all intermingled.
Not only that, Tom Pickett, who rode with Billy, his dad's address is listed in Jesse's diary that we have. So that shows another connection with Billy the Kid through yet another source.
So
thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, and I personally think they had the protection in Texas through the Texas Rangers. I don't know, because they were all
Mhm.
they were outlaws one day, Texas Rangers, so it kind of seems like it was a safe place to hide.
Well, and if you look at like the Texas Star, the 5 points
Yes.
uh, ties in with the 5 points of brotherhood in the Freemasons.
Funny
There's a
that.
lot of symbolism with the government, the state government, and
Mhm.
Masons. A lot of, and some people have called the Texas Rangers the Texas Masons. It's not as, it's not as
Hang on. Oh, wait. It's
as
back. Oh, that was weird.
yeah.
That's weird. You disappeared and back up you came. So,
That was
Oh,
okay.
weird.
weird.
It
Yeah,
was
that
Hmm.
was
because I'll
weird.
tell you how it works. Once you drop out and you come back on, I have to physically let you in.
Oh,
So you
that's
Oh,
disappeared
weird.
and bam, you were right back.
wow.
No one was more
Wow,
surprised than me.
That's
that's
weird.
really
It,
weird.
it is. It is because I have to let you back on. You automatically go to the green room. So, okay, that's
Wow.
done. Proceed.
That's twice now.
Yeah, but I had to let him in the other time. This time he went,
Oh,
you were right off the board and back on and right on the screen. You somehow managed to bypass the green room
that's weird.
completely.
Maybe somebody was letting me know that I've said enough about the Texas Rangers and Masons and Outlaws.
Yeah, it's like
But
switch gears. I know.
Yeah.
I know. Oh my gosh. So
wow.
okay, so let's just jump back over to like buried treasures.
Yeah.
Because we know it's out there. Like, do you guys were you ever able to possess like any maps aside from I think you mentioned one or
Yeah,
two?
we've had a few maps.
All right, okay.
There's there I don't know if I mentioned that last time. There was one in
Mm,
Oklahoma that Jesse and the gang had stolen. It was supposed to be 40 mule loads of gold. And, and I believe when I looked that up, according to one site, a mule on average would carry about 75 pounds. So
right.
75 times 40. And I thought that's a lot of
Jesus,
gold.
that's
But
a lot of
yeah,
gold.
so, but
Wow.
the story, that's where the story gets kind of, like a lot of treasure stories. Some say it's placer gold, hadn't been refined yet. Others say it was Mexican gold coins, Mexican eagles.
Mhm.
Others said it was U.S. coins, and the source of where they got it. Some people said they robbed a U.S. cavalry,
Mm,
shipment of gold. Others say they killed a bunch of federales down in Mexico and took it. There's no telling where it came from,
right.
but where it's buried, we found the campsite, and I found the letter J carved where they were said to have camped, and I thought this is it.
Mm,
We didn't find anything, but when we got home, it was my mom, and dad, and we got back home, and within 20-30 minutes of us walking in the door, you know, getting a drink of water, changing, just trying to relax. Um,
mhm.
we got a phone call and a guy told us, "Don't go back. That's not yours." And
Oh,
I
how
thought,
would they
how
know
could
that?
we hadn't talked to anybody about this? Nobody
Right.
knew we were on a trip anywhere. We just get this call. We know the guy now who called this, and he knows stuff that people shouldn't know. And it's not like it goes beyond a seer. He'll tell you somebody's going to call you,
Mhm,
um, and he'll tell you word for word what they're going to say. And it's, this somebody was an FBI agent, stuff
mhm,
like that. Um,
mhm.
anyway, he's not, but he, I'm trying to be vague and not tell too much because the guy is one of those shadowy people.
Right.
He told our mother about the Ferguson riots before they happened, stuff like that.
Mm. So
So
he's well informed. Yeah.
it was,
Yes. Sometimes you just best to choose your battles.
yeah,
You know.
yeah, that's something I'm not going up
But
against
so
ever. But
essentially, like if he has to tell you that, like, don't go back, it's not yours, it's there. It's still there.
yeah, I believe it, and I believe I know exactly where it's at now. Um, we were on the wrong property, real close, but on the wrong side of the fence. Um, there's others. There's
Right.
others. I believe I know where they're at. The one that gets me, and I know this sounds corny. Of course, I'd love to find a treasure and buy a yacht and sell the world and just live like a wealthy gypsy. To me, that sounds perfect.
Right.
But a lot of that, I believe, belongs. It too many people have died and given their lives over it. I think that I
Right.
think like the hidden agenda,
Hmm.
it falls in line closely with Manly Palmer Hall's um, the Manly Palmer Hall, the famous 33rd degree Mason. I forgot the name of the
Hmm.
book. Secret Teachings of All Ages.
Oh,
Um,
Manly Hall.
there's
Yeah.
there's several other books he's written, but anyway, I think it's for America, maybe for a
Yes.
rainy day fund. I'm not sure. Um,
Right.
but a lot of it is also of great historical interest, and I think it needs to be preserved.
I
That
I
said, if it's just a couple of
I
gold
agree.
bars, I don't mind taking those.
Right. I agree with you. I mean, I imagine people died, just in
Yeah,
retrieving it in the first place.
yeah,
Whether it was Frank or whether it was another outlaw or whether it was just people, self-defense, whatever the case may be. I think there's a trail of blood that follows it, and there
yeah,
would still be a trail of blood that followed it if you tried to retrieve it now. But
yeah.
it's like when you go to Europe, for England, for example, everything belongs to the crown, even if it's on your property, because there's historical value
That's
to it.
true.
And with
But
this,
I
I
like
think
the
it's
way, the way they do it in England. If you find treasure there,
you get a
the government
portion,
just doesn't take it from you, and
right?
you're
You're
left
paying
holding
for it.
nothing. Yeah, they get it. They get an
Yes.
estimate from three different museums, and they
Yes.
average it out, and that's what you get. So at
Yes.
least you're happy,
No,
and you got
exactly.
paid. So
Well, because it's all your efforts that get in there. And when they
yeah,
go in and start doing an archaeological preservation and retrieval, it can be there for years.
yeah, yeah.
If you're a farmer, for instance, you don't get to farm,
That's
because
right.
until they're done, or if you're a builder and you want to build on something, you don't get to do anything until that is complete. So I think it is a fair way to do it. And there's some countries, it's like even offshore in the oceans, it's just like, no, no, that's ours. You hit a
Oh
certain
yeah,
part and that's it.
yeah.
It's the way it is. But I think in this case, this is, Jesse James, the outlaws, all of them, they were very much a part of the West, the
Yeah.
history, like, I mean, sadly, you ask a lot of people about who they would remember more from that time period. The outlaws will get remembered more than a lot of political figures and everything,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Well, and after working for, I've worked in a city government. After getting to know how a lot of that is, I think outlaws are more honorable than a
They
lot of
have a code.
politicians.
Yeah, they
So
have a
yeah,
code that they live by too, right? So do
yeah,
Templars. So if they're part of the Masons, the Freemasons have a code. Gardy says,
yeah.
keep in mind, they all say they say all things hidden will be revealed. I believe we
Hmm.
are on the way into this being true.
I
I
agree with
agree.
That's
that
true.
wholeheartedly.
To
Yes.
get, the when it comes to the treasure and the agenda and all that I've mentioned, I think it goes back to that original fight between the Vatican and the Templar, and it just has grown throughout the centuries until whatever we've got now. But
Mm-hmm.
I also think there's a lot of spiritual. There's a spiritual side to it,
Hmm.
like the Templar.
Right.
And one, just the shape of the templates, everything to do with the treasure templates, the designs, the dimensions, all of that ties
Hmm.
in with the Kabbalistic tree of life. And
Right.
it wasn't just through the Jewish tradition or Jewish Kabbalah, that a large part of it was Jewish Kabbalah, but it was also bits of Christian Kabbalah and occult Kabbalah.
Hmm. Oh, a
Some of the,
huge occult. It goes back to the old
yeah,
mystery schools, the times of Atlantis, all of that. It's
Hmm.
so
yep.
far back. It's
It's
just like
layer
I have
upon
no idea.
layer upon layer,
Oh
it
yeah,
seems.
And
people
I
don't
believe
get the really big picture.
Yeah,
Sorry,
and
Dan.
exactly.
penetrating through all those layers, it's just it can be overwhelming. But it's definitely not boring.
Not boring
You,
at all. Go
yeah.
ahead, Dan.
Uh,
Sorry.
Well, there's so many things. It's like I keep wanting to say this, and I'm like, no, talk about that, no this. So,
Right.
but yeah. Now I'm starting to forget what I was going to say.
That's not
Sorry
good.
about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, there's The one treasure that I would really, if I was limited to just looking for one, there's one in Kansas that I believe is part of the Seven Cities of Gold, Cibola.
Oh,
And the one in Kansas, according to the experts or archaeologists, would have been called Kivera.
okay.
And I pronounced that correctly. But anyway, they claim they know where Kivera was, and I think they're off by a couple of 100 miles.
Wow. So, and what exactly is Quivera?
I believe there's a treasure there. I don't know if it's knowledge. A lot of, when I've grown over the years to think, I used to think of treasure as just gold and silver and jewels like on it. But I
No.
also think a lot of
Yeah,
it ties in with knowledge, history that
absolutely.
like Manly Palmer Hall's wife, Marie Bauer Hall, she discovered the treasure, or she discovered what she believes is a treasure in Williamsburg, Virginia. That very close to the College of William and Mary,
Hmm.
Bruton Parish Church. You can look up the Bruton Parish Church vault.
Right.
Read about Marie Bauer Hall. She wrote a book. It was titled "Foundations Unearthed."
Wow.
She decrypted ciphers in the works of Shakespeare, and also anagrams on the tombstones at the cemetery at Bruton Church, at the Bruton Parish Church,
Hmm.
that pointed towards a treasure. Actually, the first thing she did, she said that there used to be an original church that predates the church that is there now, which
Right.
was built in the 1750, I think 17, sometime in the 1700s.
Right.
Let's see. Anyway, I'm starting to get off the trail on that. But she found, people mocked her, said there wasn't another church before that one. She said yes, there was, and she got permission to excavate, and she uncovered the original foundations of the
Wow.
church that she was talking about. So she
Wow.
proved all the naysayers wrong. Then she went further to say the anagrams and ciphers that she had decoded from the works of Shakespeare and the tombs in the cemetery pointed to a vault. I think it was 22 feet beneath where the altar in the old church was. And she started to dig for it, and they put a stop to it, ran her off. She tried to do it again. They threw her in the jail for like a
Well,
day.
because they
Uh,
wanted it, most
yeah.
likely.
Well, and guess who bought the whole town
The
shortly
whole
after that?
town.
The Rockefellers. They
No.
bought all
Shocker.
of Colonia. They
Yeah.
bought, yeah,
Shocker.
Right.
Wow.
exactly. There's
Wow.
said to be tunnels that go from certain homes to the vault. And
Oh, that
anyway,
means
the
there are.
Rockefellers bought all of that. They don't own the church, but it's said they control the board of
Well,
directors for the
they'll
church.
control the board because they probably own everything around it. So
Mhm.
therefore, you
Yep,
can't get to it to dig on it,
exactly.
right? Ah,
But
boy, oh
according to
boy.
Marie Bauer Hall, she said there's the usual treasure. There's some gold and silver, stuff like that. But she
Right.
said it in the vault. She said it contains history and information that would shake the pillars of known history, and
And I
also
think that's
information
mhm.
of
Templar.
great. It was information. What was it? Proof of great. What was it? It would shake the pillars of religion and history.
Well, sure, because it's probably Templar.
Yeah.
They knew the Templars came here, going back
Yep.
hundreds of years ago, predated Columbus, and a lot of that stuff got left behind in certain spots.
Yep.
It's
And I
that
think
simple.
that
And they
I
were
think that
after knowledge. It wasn't just gold, it
yes,
was knowledge,
exactly.
ancient knowledge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's
And
that's
that
that's the point I was trying to make. I think the bulk of the real treasure is the spiritual knowledge.
yeah,
And the artifacts, that the real physical treasure is just the
Relics, the
tip.
esoteric stuff,
Yes,
the occult
yes.
stuff, the alchemy,
Exactly.
the
The conduit
power
to the
sources, free
to the
energy.
yes,
Boy, oh
you
boy,
got
we
it.
could
yeah,
go.
Yeah.
I
I
know,
think that's
right?
the conduit to the to the real treasure, which is the
I
spiritual
agree.
knowledge.
There's
And that's when I
there's
started changing my mind on treasure. I really started
yeah.
changing my mind about what needs to be done with it if I found it.
Right.
I would be happy
Yeah.
to know, just to see it, look at it, touch some of it, but
Mhm.
I do think it belongs in a museum. Not to sound corny, but
Right. No, it's
it,
true.
Like Indiana
it
Jones.
belongs in
That's
a
what he
museum.
says, man.
So
But maybe you could throw you a shekel
that
or
belongs in a
something,
museum.
Dan. Maybe you
Yeah,
could you'll throw
but
you a shekel. It'll be good.
yeah, that'd be nice. Or
Even a shekel from that time period would be, you do all right.
But
yeah,
I do really
the
think that is
church,
the bulk of the treasure is the
the
spiritual
church at
knowledge.
Williamsburg, the Bruton Parish vault that Marie
Mm,
Bauer discovered. That is the head of the Tree of Life template that I figured out.
right.
And it went from the main pillar. I'm not, if you're familiar with the Kabbalistic Tree of Life,
I am.
it's got
Yes.
3 pillars, 2 outside pillars, and then a
Right.
central pillar. The
Right.
central one runs from Bruton Parish Church to Victoria Peak, New Mexico.
Right.
And there's a lot of numbers that get involved in that, gematria,
Mhm.
it-
Mhm.
a lot of different things. But just simply state it, it runs, from that's the central pillar, and then it ties off. And this was interesting too. There's a masculine side and a feminine side of the
That's
Tree
right.
of Life.
That's right.
Well, when if you're viewing, and it runs east to west, which is how maps used to be.
Right.
Used to, in the old days, the top of the map, instead of being north like it is today, was east, because that's where the sun rose. But
Right.
anyway, if you go off, I guess if you're looking at the Tree of Life, and you're looking at the right hand side, the first point down from that on the right column is Columbus, Georgia.
Mhm.
And that's the masculine side of the Tree of Life. Well,
Mm.
it didn't dawn on me until I started mapping all that out. But the top of the left pillar is Columbia.
Mhm.
Columbia, I can't remember what state it's in. God, that's going to drive me crazy. But anyway, 2 cities, and that's on the feminine side. I thought, this is odd. It's Columbus on the
Mhm.
masculine side, Columbia on the feminine side. And like you said about coincidences
Right.
earlier, it just keeps adding. The coincidence. There's too much for it to be a coincidence.
I agree with you. And the Rockefellers or any of these
Yeah,
elite type people would not have gone to those extremes if there wasn't something substantial.
Yep.
You can be a millionaire. You don't have to go treasure hunting and take a chance that you're going to get a few shekels in there. But if there's
that's
something
true.
substantial, let's face it, the United States of America was supposed to be considered the New Jerusalem. Along with that will come all
Yeah,
of its secrets.
exactly.
Yep.
And another interesting thing about
That's a
Williamsburg,
template thing, by
Virginia,
the way, people. Just
there's the
come
Tree
I
on.
of
love
Life
it.
template.
I love it.
And well, there's a small Tree of Life template on the campus of William and Mary College, and
Right.
it ties in, and that's part of the whole treasure store, a part of it. But
Right.
I don't know if it was like a prototype or if it was a clue. But it's really the main pillar from Williamsburg, Virginia to Victoria Peak, New Mexico is 1,715 miles long.
Right.
If you now from the vault at Bruton Parish Church, or actually the little tower they've got on the current church, to William and Mary College is 1,715 feet, and that ties in. There's a lot of gematria involved with that, but anyway, there's a lot of the numbers are a big part of the story, and
Right. Absolutely.
it gets deep, but it's really fun.
Tesla always said it was about mathematics, frequency, vibration.
And vibration. Yep.
It's all there. Well, we're heading up to the top of the hour, guys. So this is a part where you promote yourself, give us your website, tell us what you got coming up, where to find you, blah, 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 blah. Let's go.
All right. You can find our books, Teresa F. Duke, and I'm Daniel J. Duke. You can find our books at anywhere books are sold. Innertraditions.com, that's our publisher. You can find them at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere. Websites, I've got 2 websites. One is our late mother's website that we keep going. That's outlawjessejames.com. And then the other website, my website, and forgive me if I get it wrong. I don't know why I did this. I've got my email address, which is opposite of my website, and I always I misquote anyway. My website, I think, is authordanielduke.com, or you can just type in author Daniel Duke in the search window and you'll find it eventually. So,
Right, right. Any
you,
links that you sent me with your all of your original promos is in the show description, so they can
okay.
go in and just click on everything. I put the links to the trailers for the books, everything you sent me, it's all there. So
All
if
right.
that
Thanks.
helps, right? Yeah. So if that helps. So what do you guys have coming up? Like, do you have anything fun?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we do. I'm going to be flying out to LA in March, but I'm not supposed to talk about it. So, but
Well, for
it's
Pete's
interesting.
sakes,
Yeah.
that's not helping us.
Yeah, I know. That's as much as I can say. Once
Right.
I sign the paper, I don't want to
Yeah,
mess
it's
it up.
tough.
So,
It's tough. Yeah,
but I
that's good.
can say I'm flying to LA in a month. So,
Right. Well, it
and I'm on a
sounds like it's
crash
going to be.
diet.
If you can't talk about it, it sounds like it's going to be something exciting and
Yeah.
fruitful. So, well, thank you guys for joining me this evening. And I was serious about maybe doing another show and bringing on your medium and tying
That'd be
her,
great.
seeing how she
Mhm.
ties into everything and what it's been like for her working with you guys and what information she's been able to contribute to help you guys on this path to rectifying history, I guess is the best way to put it.
She will knock your socks off. I believe me that
Right.
it's amazing. So
Right. I love it. I say we do it, but I'm booking into May. So you'd have to connect with me and talk to her
sounds
and
good.
we'll make
All
it
right.
happen. Sound good?
Sounds good to
Oh,
me.
all right, guys. Thank you. And I will be in
Thank
touch, of
you.
course. You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much. Always a pleasure being on your show.
Oh, it's a lot of fun having you guys. We always have so much fun. It's so informative. I love it. People love it. And I have no doubt it will do well in the archives as well.
I love the
Good.
comments too. That's always nice.
We've got great people in chat,
Yeah.
and then they come on after that. You can always go, check out Facebook. I know there's so many. The archive's going over 200 different platforms, so it's
Wow.
I know we get little snippets of things, but that's 200. It's hard to keep track of, but I
That's a lot
try
of
I try to
platforms.
show you guys stuff. Yeah, for sure, and it will go on to Roku as well. So as an archive, I think they
Wow.
rotate every 4 to 6 weeks or something like that. So it'll be good, and people are chiming in. People are loving it. So we definitely have to do it again.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds
That'd be
good.
wonderful.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for
You're
having us on.
welcome. You're very
Bye bye.
welcome. Bye now. Well, everybody, we've come to the end of another fantastic segment here on the Outer Realm. Big thank you to Daniel and Teresa. Oh my goodness, just wealth of information. Tell me that wasn't exciting. I've been looking forward to this specific segment for quite a while, and there it was. So, for those of you who are watching, please, whatever you're watching, whichever platform, subscribe, like, share, comment. I do on YouTube. I do go back and I will personally respond to your comments as I really look forward to seeing them. So, thank you. We appreciate that. Big thank you to Folgers Coffee for sponsoring not just tonight's show, but every night that we do the show. So thank you very much. Big thank you to Justin Snicker and Steve McGinnis. We appreciate you all so very much. So next week, super exciting, for the very first time on the Outer Realm, we're bringing on a TikTok sensation, as I like to call them, because we've got millions of subscribers and just amazing, amazing information. Matt Rosk, and he founded Cultivate Elevate to bring back information that has been suppressed and caused our society to become sicker and weaker. Our mission is to educate and empower individuals to rise above the state of fear because there's always solutions. He's got stuff on ancient history, on the paranormal, on UFOs, on archaeology, on you name it. You name it. This guy talks about everything and it's fascinating. So we'll make sure we get the links up so you guys can go check him out before the show. Amelia follows him and she's been sending stuff over and I'm just like, oh God, we really need to talk to this guy. So tune in for that. Thursday night, we welcome the return of Alexander Szeszkiewicz, an independent researcher and author from Poland who's passionate about ancient mysteries, metaphysics, and spirituality. He wrote an incredible book called Deja Vu. And honestly, he did it at the age of like 17, 19, translated it from Polish to English on his own as well. It's just a young guy. He's just brilliant. Part one did so well. I think just one of the archives hit almost 1 million. It was just wild. Anyway, part two is going to cover the true history of Atlantis with connections to other ancient civilizations as well as other lost civilizations. So definitely, guys, come and check it out. He's a brilliant young man. I enjoyed spending a couple of hours with him. He's just fabulous. So have a great weekend to all of you who joined us in chat this evening. Thank you. You make it so much more fun, and our guests love interacting with you. So please feel free to comment. Find me. You're on YouTube. Do not hesitate to go in and put in messages. I will respond. So thank you. Have a great weekend. We shall see you next Wednesday. Good night.